Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture, either individually or where they happen to intersect. My name's Ben Warner and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow co-host Steve Kern to talk about Windows 10, the Microsoft Hololens and the Internet of Things today. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Great topics today. Very interesting. They're going to change life a lot in the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start our discussion with what Microsoft announced at their recent event, because I think it segues nicely into the overall Internet of Things discussion, especially around the HoloLens. But just quickly, Windows 10, the impression is that this is probably what Windows 8 should have been in the first place, which is just curious. It's so Microsoft, isn't it? It's like two steps forward, three steps back, or whatever it is that they do, whenever they release things. I don't know if specifically it's going to be that groundbreaking. Like, they're trying to make it sound like it's a huge step forward, because especially with, they're jumping 2 version numbers. But it's actually not that different. It's just more putting back in what people wanted in the first place. And it's encouraging, at least, that for consumers that they're going to be providing it free for a year for upgrades. So it should be a good release. Did you have any thoughts on that, Steve? I mean, I'm not sure if you really use Windows that much these days.
No, I actually probably use Windows more than I use OS X. But it's funny. I actually have become a big fan of Windows, and I really liked Windows 8 until last week when it loaded some updates and reset everything, and now apps are popping up all over the screen. I'm going to have to spend some time fixing that. But I think that Windows 10 will get it right, and it's I like what Microsoft is doing. I like the fact that it's free for an upgrade. I mean, we've seen Apple do that now for the last year and a half, but it's good to see that, and I think that's a really positive step.
Conceptually, it's a big change for them because, historically they've made all their money off of selling Windows licenses. And of course, they're going to continue to make a bucket load of money from those licenses from the enterprise, but because that's where the majority of where Windows licenses are. But they're still going to miss out on a huge chunk of revenue when they release this thing for free. And granted, it's only a year, but it's still a year's worth of revenue.
True, but I think Microsoft are taking a short-term hit to really reposition themselves in the market. And we'll talk more about that now with the Internet of Things. I think, this is actually a very clever long-term view for them.
Yeah, and I think it's also very smart of them to put a lot of their top software onto other platforms as well, like Office being the prime example. The Office that I've used the apps on Excel, Word and all of that on the iPad, and they work really well. Apparently the Android one does as well, and almost to the point where the Windows enthusiasts are upset that the latest versions aren't on Windows, but I'm sure that will be addressed sometime this year as well.
It definitely will.
Okay, we'll move on to some of their more, I guess, surprising announcements, because I guess they didn't have to throw these in, but maybe they threw these in just to kind of get people excited about Microsoft again, that they aren't just sort of sitting on past laurels. Maybe they're not that elegantly named, but there were 2 interesting pieces of tech that they announced: the Surface Hub and the HoloLens. And the Surface Hub is essentially just big screens that you can probably put. It's probably more for a work environment, but still, you can see that's useful. It's almost Minority Report in a way, that you can put these screens up on surfaces everywhere and interact with them and all that sort of thing.
The interesting thing is, I've said this before in our various discussions, but that capacity has actually been in Windows since 7.
Yeah.
Windows 7. They just actually haven't released it or created a proper interface for it. And that to some extent is because the interfaces, the screens, the virtual sort of, aspects weren't around 5 or 6 years ago, but they've been planning for it for a long time.
It's a lot of professional applications that could be used for this sort of thing. I mean, architects maybe might be able to get some good usage out of it. And I mean, that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's plenty of others. But it's interesting, and hopefully they can sort of get that off the ground. But I guess what the one that really sort of stole the show was the Hololens. And as an interesting counterpoint, with Google Glass going away, that suddenly Microsoft enters with their own, it's more a headset rather than glasses, but we'll say it's their own set of glasses anyway, just for the sake of it.
Well, it's the same
interesting
technology in different guises. Let's put it that way. It's wearable.
Yeah.
And visual.
But what I found fascinating about this is that it sounded, from the keynote, it sounded more like, maybe this is just one of those dorky prototype things that won't go anywhere. But from the people that actually used it on the day, it sounds like they've actually developed this a lot further than what people have thought, and actually does work properly. Even though they only had a few demos, but the promise of it's quite interesting. And I'm sure the one that they keep referring to is the NASA usage, the going out and sort of being able to go onto Mars without going to Mars, through the 3D projection techniques that they use in the HoloLens. It can really open up in so many ways beyond even, say, gaming, which is what I think most people thought this might have been for.
Yeah, well, look, this is a really interesting shift, I think, for positioning this technology. So this technology has actually been around for a number of years. And high-end people, you'll find that designers, probably Johnny Ive probably uses something like this at Apple to envisage products. And they've been doing this for quite a while through simulation and gaming. But this is a big shift, because this is now... It's bringing it to everyone. So, as we've also said about Hollywood filmmaking, Ben, a lot of the techniques, a lot of the computing power now that only existed in a studio 10 years ago, you can have on your desktop. And this is taking something that was a specialist technology. It's been around in various guises, evolving for the last 10 years, but the fact now that it can be made cheaply enough and can be applied to everyday life, and the fact that Microsoft have recognized that and chosen to develop it, says a lot. And it says a lot about where we're going. Yeah,
well, say if, I don't know, you're not able to travel, you could, in theory, put a set of these on and take a virtual tour of a city around the other side of the world. Or maybe you could go and inspect an apartment that's up for sale, but you don't need to actually go there, assuming, of course, they deliver the right images to you. Nothing dodgy's happening there. Or obviously the NASA example, where they, you can go onto another planet, literally. Or it could just be as simple as trying out products. It'll project it for you. Maybe it could even say, if you wanted to see how a particular item might look on your coffee table, you could project it straight through the HoloLens onto your table and see it.
Yeah.
And they're sort of smallish things. Oh, well, the NASA thing probably isn't, but there's probably things we can't even think of yet that this could be used for.
But there's also the simple things. So, you're in New York, you want to have Christmas dinner with your friends in Melbourne, and with this and Skype, for instance, you can actually be together in 3D.
Yeah.
And probably even have dinner together.
It's almost one step closer to the holodeck in Star Trek, almost, because all they have to do then is just get rid of the actual gear on your head after that, and
and that's where Google Glass will make a comeback in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to talk about sort of segue into the Internet of Things here, because I think the HoloLens kind of fits in with this sort of thing. And just to step back a bit, Google Chairman Eric Schmidt he said, what was the future of the Internet? And his response was, it'll actually disappear, because it's going to become so pervasive and so in everything that you almost won't even know it's there, because it's like infrastructure. It'll be like roads and all that sort of thing. It's just something that will be there in everything and connect everything together. You can see that the HoloLens fits into that quite nicely, because it can connect to things and also show you things that are in different places, etc. I wonder if people truly realize just how far that's going to take us in terms of if everything's connected. It's going to allow us to do a lot more things that we probably can't do right now.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you can see this. If you think about what Microsoft are doing with these sorts of things, is Windows will fade into the background. That's why it's free. You won't even know that Windows is there, but it'll be running your HoloLens. It'll be running, all your interactivity with your devices at home, devices at work, devices everywhere else. And we're already seeing that with the cloud. The next step is to actually have that connectedness between all your devices, whether it's an air conditioner, a fridge, routines. And we spoke about automation last week. So you won't see the operating system anymore. It'll just be that the product that you choose to have 3D experiences will be a Microsoft product, and it'll run seamlessly as Apple products do on Apple systems. And I think that's where all of this is headed. And the Google chairman's quite right, Schmidt's right, in saying that for long we won't see anything.
I think Microsoft may be, I guess they're playing a little catch up in terms of this notion that it's not about the devices anymore, it's about the ecosystem. This is just another branch of the ecosystem. Apple and Google have kind of been working a bit further down this line, and they're a bit ahead of them on this, but at least Microsoft's sort of catching up to them as well.
Well, this is Microsoft breaking away from the desktop effectively.
Exactly. And it just makes it all quite fascinating. I mean, we see it in sort of baby sort of steps now, like with Apple introducing like the handoff and continuity features in their recent operating systems. And I've tried that where, you'll open up a document on your iPad, and then if you happen to walk across to your computer, your Mac, it'll appear as an icon. You can open it straight away and just keep going.
Yeah.
That's a very beginning step and of how this Internet of Things idea will work. You could be, I don't know, it's a similar sort of thing. Maybe you're watching something on your phone, you walk in the door, it automatically knows to put it onto your TV the minute it gets within proximity. Simple thing, things like that. And that's going to feel space age when they finally get around to doing that.
Well, the thing is, the things will be talking to each other. So when you get home in your electric car and you plug it into the wall, your electric car might have got a full charge from its solar cells while you were out there, and your car then chooses to give some of that power back to devices in your house to charge your other electrical devices. These are the things, you'll have total control over them with an app, but largely they'll be working out these things for themselves on whatever settings you've got. And this is the Internet of Things, and that will be an operating system that'll be unseen, but it'll be there.
Just something I wanted to say quickly too, and this is more an Australian perspective, is that unfortunately we've got an NBN rollout happening here that's going to increase the overall speed and capacity of our internet. But
that's not unfortunate.
That part's not unfortunate, but the politics around it's unfortunate, because there's some thinking in the political sphere that this is like a white elephant type thing that's wasting a lot of money, and it's just amazing in this day and age that, especially when you look at internet speeds around the world and the way it's set up, it's so good in many countries. But here, this concept of internet limits, speed restrictions, and it's kind of leaving us behind a bit.
Can I just add something to that? Because I only found this out recently. But, people say in Australia about the NBN are worried that the cables won't be able to cope with the capacity, another 10 years. Actually, all they have to do to increase the capacity is change the ends of the cables where they plug in. So the cables that will physically be out there, as long as they have durability and can last, they don't have to be improved. You only change the ends of the cables at your nodes. Very interesting. I didn't know that. So, in fact, it is completely upgradable.
And that's why it makes it all the more important that it gets out there in some form, because
Damn straight.
It's I was having a discussion with someone about this the other day, that the internet is not a cool thing that's used by a bunch of nerds playing games online. It's now progressed to the point where it's infrastructure. And I don't think there's a real understanding, especially in this country, that it's actually infrastructure now.
And to tie that in with what you're saying generally about the internet disappearing, think about it today. If you're 15, 18 years old and you've got a smart device, do you actually think when you're using your apps that you're using the internet? Probably not.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the internet disappearing.
Yeah, it's not, that thought of you go to your computer, open your browser and type in a web address is quite quaint by comparison to what this is suggesting that it can do.
Exactly. So it's a big change, and to see these high level technologies now come down to consumer levels is incredible.
Oh, it's exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to it actually, because it kind of it takes this notion that you have to go to a particular thing to do something, a device or whatever. As we've discussed before, you'll just have a range of devices. They'll all talk to each other, and whichever one you happen to be sitting in front of or standing in front of or holding at the time is the one you can just pick up and start using, which is really incredible.
That's right. That's right. It is.
Alrighty, we might wrap it up there, Steve. It's more we can talk about, and we'll keep an eye on the HoloLens whenever it gets released later this year. Hopefully, I don't know if we'll be able to touch one in Australia, but you know, it might be nice if it happens at some point.
I'll get onto Microsoft now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website's scitechculture.com. We've got all of our links and content there. We'll keep posting a lot more content, not just these videos that we produce, but blogs, photos, and all sorts of other interesting things. At least we hope they're interesting to you. You can interact with us directly on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. I'd love to hear from you there. And we've got our photos on Instagram, etc. And if you think anyone's interested in our weekly or, well, roughly weekly discussions on topics related to science, technology, and culture, then send them to our website. We'd greatly appreciate that. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.